What is the greatest match in sports anime? There's countless amazing matches to choose from the Battle of Concepts in Haikyuu, to the Blue Lock 11 versus Japan's under-20s, to Vorpal Swords versus Jabberwock in Kuroko no Basket, and even Jinga versus Ryuga in There's so many reasons to love each of these matches, but I'm going to show you why Raimon versus Zeus is undeniably the greatest match in sports anime because of three very special things that happen in it. But these aren't the only things that make it an amazing match. And to show you what I mean, I'll also be comparing it to these games. And we'll start with the most important component in any climactic showdown: build up. For those of you unfamiliar with this banger of an anime, Inazuma 11 is pretty much your quintessential underdog story told in the form of a football anime. This kid's name is Endo, and he's the captain of a rundown football team. He's also the grandson of a legendary goalkeeper who died under some pretty mysterious circumstances. And this is the first seed that we eventually see blossom during the Zeus game. And that's what this show does so well. There are a few key things that happen on Raimon's journey to the finals that all pay off when they play Zeus. And part of why this works so well is the same reason most of us love sports anime so much: the structure. Let me explain. This is everyone Raimon plays on their way to the finals against Zeus. And this is everyone Karasuno plays on their way to the finals against Shiratorizawa. See anything familiar? It's all just one big tournament arc. And there is not a single soul on this planet that doesn't froth at the mouth at the thought of watching a tournament. There's a reason the Champions League knockout rounds are so much more entertaining than the group stages. There's a reason the UA Sports Festival is one of the most loved arcs in My Hero. And there's a reason we all love Beyblade. This is a show about kids throwing spinning toys at one another, and yet it is so sick. Why? Tournament arcs. They make it so that anyone can lose. In fact, they make it so that almost everyone loses. And that massively increases the stakes, especially when the teams you care about actually lose. But a tournament arc alone isn't enough to keep things interesting, even with the promise of an epic final battle. There's another component that's just as key, and in Inazuma 11, this starts with the formation of the team itself. So why is this so important? Well, it goes without saying that everyone loves an underdog story. In Blue Lock, Isagi starts off as pretty much the worst player there, besides this guy, and he's also in the worst team, but that's what makes it so interesting. We wouldn't really care if he was one of the best players because there wouldn't be much room for growth, and that's what's so important here. The easiest way to keep someone's attention is through progression. If you're watching this video, it's because it's getting closer and closer to Raimon finally playing Zeus while covering important things that happen along the way for the game to make sense. And in the same way, putting Isagi right at the bottom is the best way we can see him progress. But there's more to it than just that. Raimon are as underdog as they come. They were barely able to string together 11 players to play in their first match, and they still ended up getting piped 20-1.
20-1, look at the time.
But the key here is how they struggled to even get enough players in the first place. If Goenji hadn't magically spawned a pair of shorts, they'd be screwed. Seriously though, where did he get these shorts from? And I wonder where else we've seen a team struggling thanks to not having enough players. And these aren't the only sports anime that have used this trick. In Haikyuu, Karasuno start out pretty bare bones with Nishinoya and Asahi joining the team 9 episodes in. By putting the team we care about at a disadvantage, it just makes us care about them more. We desperately want them to win, and it's even better when they don't. I'd argue it's far more interesting seeing the protagonists lose than it is to see them win. And we've seen this quite often, with Team Z losing their first game and Karasuno losing to Seijo. But Inazuma 11 approaches things a little differently. In Haikyuu, Karasuno are able to reinvent and redeem themselves by eventually beating Seijo and cementing their spot in the finals against Shiratorizawa. Now, I personally like this second Seijo match even better than the actual final, but that might be because I love Oikawa. And Blue Lock actually does something similar. While Team Z don't have another chance to play Team X, Isagi is still able to get his revenge against Barrow in the 2v2s. Hell, even Jinga gets his ass kicked by Ryuga before finally beating him. And we see the same thing in Inazuma 11. Kind of. Raimon are eventually able to beat Royal Academy thanks to the goalkeeper and striker jumping off the stomach of their fat friend and scoring a synchronized overhead kick.
Wait, what?
Now, this game is easily the second best game in Season 1, with only the Zeus game being better. But I'd argue these matches do more for Royal than they do for Raimon, and by comparison, they make the Zeus game even better. We know that Royal Academy are crazy strong. They've won the football frontier 40 years in a row. Granted, most of them were likely because of their coach's dirty tactics. But that wasn't the team's fault. The team themselves are actually quite likable, even this guy. And that's what makes it even better when they get utterly destroyed by Zeus. Seriously, they got slapped up so bad they had to call it quits before the second half even started. In fact, Zeus are so powerful that they've never even played a second half before. This isn't to say that Royal's only purpose is to get annihilated so we know how strong Zeus are. The Royal match and the build-up to it have some of the best moments of Season 1. The show just makes great use of this opportunity in a similar way to how Seijo have never been able to beat Shiratorizawa, and that's what's so important. Haikyuu is the king of character dynamics, and by using Ushiwaka's blunt nature to badmouth Seijo, they set his team up as this final boss to the point the intro to the show literally portrays him as a mountain that the team have to climb over. And that's what's so important. In any final battle, it's the protagonist's job to overcome their enemy, and that process usually begins by first tearing down the characters we care about, and that brings us to Endo's struggles. You'd think that after all the character development he went through during the Royal Academy match, the show would finally give him a break, but this positive ball of energy is put through hell both before and during the Zeus game. You see, while Raimon are undeniably the underdogs, Endo is probably the best goalkeeper in the tournament. I've said this countless times, but he is literally the Lionel Messi of goalkeepers, saving his team to the point his hands stop working. There literally isn't a move as powerful as his God Hand, which has pulled his team out of trouble again and again, but eventually it breaks. Now you might be asking, Mokka, what kind of shot can break through such a powerful move? Surely it must be pretty epic, right? Well... Between this and the utter gutsiness bat, I can't decide which move is more ridiculous. But the point is, God Hand wasn't strong enough against Triangle Z, and according to Kiddo, Zeus have even more powerful shots than that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Now I know what you're thinking. Didn't this guy play for Royal Academy? What's he doing in the Raimon team? Well, that's actually a pretty interesting story. And don't worry, I'm not going to bore you by recapping what happened. Psych, I don't give a shit what you think. Now get dunked on by Endo stopping Emperor Penguin and beating Royal so that Raimon officially enter the football frontier where they first play Shuriken, a team of ninjas that actually use tactics for a change. This is a surprisingly good game where we get to see the wall, which is one of the most iconic defensive moves in the show, and Kazamaru drops a generational masterclass that even puts Messi against Madrid to shame. We then learn Royal got destroyed by Zeus and all the players are injured besides Kiddo, who missed the game because he hurt his foot against Raimon. He ends up joining Raimon to get revenge, and they play Farm, who have never conceded, except they end up conceding as we get to see the Inazuma break, another iconic special move. Then we meet Ichinose, who is Domin and Aki's friend from the States, who is supposed to be dead but turns out he's not dead, don't ask why, and he teaches the team Tri-Pegasus before joining Raimon as they play Kirkwood, Goenji's old team. And this is where Endo's God Hand finally cracks into tiny little pieces, but that's nothing compared to how it shatters his confidence. And that brings us to Endo desperately trying to learn a legendary goalkeeping move created by his grandfather called Majin the Hand. Now if you didn't know, Majin means devil, and you'll see a lot of this sort of symbolism throughout the show, which sounds really bad, but it's actually pretty sick, so I can't complain. Anyway, this move is supposed to be the strongest goalkeeping move ever. But the problem is, Endo is really struggling to learn it to the point that even Aki notices. I mean, that's just a lie, isn't it? She saw him upset when his friend wouldn't be allowed to stay with her brother if Raimon beat Royal. Yeah, that's right. In this anime, a children's football match determines if two siblings are allowed to stay together. Those are the kind of stakes we're dealing with. And if you want to see even crazier stuff happen in Season 2, like a literal alien invasion, make sure to subscribe. And speaking of stakes, just in case you weren't sure just how important it is for Endo to learn Majin the Hand, the anime decides to just straight up show us by introducing us to a character that almost everyone loves. There's actually two players in Inazuma 11 fans literally salivate over. You'll meet one of them in Season 2, so stay tuned for that video. But for now, meet the captain of Zeus. Now I'm going to casually gloss over the fact that this kid just stopped 2 shots at the same time despite not even being a goalkeeper. I don't quite think you understand just how much aura this guy has. It's as if the makers of the show wanted to create the biggest Giga Chad in the series. They even give him 2 of the craziest special moves, but you'll have to wait until the actual match for that because there's no way he's using either of those against a kid that can barely stand up. Do you understand what kind of a top G you need to be to walk into your ops yard and look everyone in the eye as you knock their captain out? And then he straight up just disappears like he's Gilgamesh from Fate. Introducing Aphrodite at this point is pure genius. Up until this point, we've only heard how good Zeus are, but now we finally get to see it. It's pretty similar to how Blue Lock is able to show us how good Rin is just by him kicking the ball twice. And this is something that's really needed. You can't have a match without someone to root against. In Haikyuu, that was done in the form of Ushiwaka, who they pretty much make out to be the final boss. He's strong, powerful, intelligent, athletic, and has seemingly endless stamina. Just think about what you see in that final game. Hinata's declaration of war, Nishinoya's persistence, the third years giving it their all for what could be their final ever game and the greatest moment of the season. All of these moments are in response to pure, unadulterated strength. These moments would not have been the same if it were not for the utterly perfect writing that went into crafting a great antagonist. And in the same way, Aphrodite is exactly what Inazuma 11 needed. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty important for Endo to quickly learn March in the Hand. But before I go into whether or not he's actually able to learn it, I want to point out 2 amazing lines of dialogue that just show you why Inazuma 11 is in S tier when it comes to sports anime. For starters, Endo thinks that if he has to keep relying on his team to save him, he's failing as both the captain and keeper. And this is amazing from both a character and a narrative perspective. And it's really important in the Zeus match. It speaks volumes of his character that the first thing he thinks about isn't his role as a goalkeeper, even though that's what he loves doing. It's actually his role as captain that's the most important to him. And this is actually one of the first times the show flat out mentions the fact he's the captain. Sure, it's obvious, because the show makes it obvious. It's not something that needs to be stated because almost every single interaction Endo has makes it so damn clear that he's an amazing captain. But that's also what makes it that much harder to watch him be so unsure of himself. And that's where the second amazing line of dialogue comes in.
でもあの笑顔を見るのはちょっと辛いな。笑顔。キーパーの責任、キャプテンの責任。あんなに笑顔が苦しく見える遠藤くんは初めて。
There's probably nobody better to understand how Endo feels than Aki. She's one of his closest friends and recognizes that he has to force a smile for the benefit of his team. And it only makes us feel that much worse for him. We're used to him being bubbly, cheerful, and hot-headed, but now he has to fake those things. And it just makes it tragic.
じいちゃん、マジンザハンドって何なんだよ。どうやったらできるんだ。
Now the show does balance this out with some more wholesome and light-hearted moments. We get to see a lot of the side characters shine as they try to help Endo learn March in the Hand. And we get this lovely scene of Natsumi almost killing Endo with a rice ball she made and then calling him high maintenance. And we also get this scene of Ichinose showing complete faith that Endo will be able to learn the move even though he barely knows him. And that speaks volumes for the kind of character Endo is. And surely his friends are correct. Surely he can learn March in the Hand in time, right? After all, he's one of the best and most talented players in the show. I mean, he's literally a part of 4 of the team's most powerful special moves, so he should be able to learn anything. And this actually brings me to a problem I have with how other people think of Endo. A lot of people are under the impression that he's remarkably talented because he's the grandson of the legendary goalkeeper Daisuke. Well, no. The most noticeable thing about Endo has never been his power or skills. It's his fighting spirit and love for football. His skill as a goalkeeper is something he developed through blood, sweat, and tears because of his love for the sport. And yes, maybe he was born with a high potential for football, but there really isn't any way to prove that. Later on in the series, we see characters who are able to pick things up far quicker than Endo ever could. But the point is, he had to grind himself to dust to get to where he is now. So I'd argue Endo's real talent isn't how good of a goalkeeper he is, but is actually his love for football and an unyielding hunger to keep playing. And that's what makes it so painful when we see him doubt himself. We know how hard he's worked, but we also know that his God Hand, a skill that was once invincible, is now completely useless. Not only that, but he simply isn't good enough to learn his granddad's legendary move for one simple reason. He isn't his granddad, so he can't learn it. And that's heartbreaking.
稲妻イレブンのおじさんたちが叶えられなかった夢を俺たちは叶えたいんだ。
So that brings us to the day of the match, where Raimon still have no way of stopping any of Zeus's shots. And this is where the show dumps a lot on you, but it never feels like a lot because it's all just paying off things that were built up earlier. For starters, this is Raimon's ex-coach who was fired because he tried to murder the players. Yes, you heard that right. And he's currently on the run, not from the police, but from Kageyama, who has been the villain of this story from day one. Now you might be asking, what makes Kageyama so scary that this guy is literally wetting himself thinking about him? Well, let's recap what he's done so far. When we're first introduced to him, he steamrolls this unnamed school because they lost to Royal in a football match. After that, we learn that 40 years ago, he sabotaged the original Inazuma 11's team bus, severely injuring them so they couldn't make it to the finals. He then asked Raimon's old coach to do the same to them, but luckily he was caught by my angel Natsumi. He was then responsible for injuring Raimon's chairman, who is also Natsumi's father. And then he gave us this killer line which foreshadowed two things. One of which was the fact that he literally tried to kill the Raimon team by dropping steel girders on them. Come on, my guy. Is football really that deep? Apparently it is, because it brings us to the second meaning of this line. If you spit on gods, they'll rain on you later. Why is this so important? Because this guy is the coach of Zeus. Yes, you heard me clearly. He coaches the team that obliterated his old team to the point they were so injured they couldn't keep playing. And to finish things off, he orchestrated the car crash that left Goenji's little sister in a coma. That's right, this kid is so good that they had to try and kill his sister. And now you're thinking, yes, that's all pretty bad, but at least it can't get worse.
大輔さん、お前のおじいさんの死には影山が関わっているかもしれない。
Now, most people would call this guy stupid for telling Endo something so big before such an important match. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you, except this is just another example of the show's excellent writing. His reasoning is actually really sound. He doesn't want Endo playing the game out of his hatred for Kageyama. He wants him playing out of his love for the sport. It's one last beautiful scene we get before we're thrown into non-stop action. Endo loves the sport and he'll never let anyone tarnish it for him. In that sense, he has something that original Inazuma 11 never had, a completely pure love for football. And the same thing goes for the rest of his team, and I really mean his team. He built this team from nothing, even when the school didn't acknowledge them as a club. Hell, even a lot of the players didn't consider themselves to be a proper football team. But Endo persisted and never gave up. And eventually, his love for the sport spread from one person to the next until he built a team capable of going up against the very gods themselves. But whether or not they actually do it remains to be seen. Also, how did everyone get into this flying stadium? Do they just have some kind of lift taking them into it? And how is this thing flying in the first place? But I suppose the better question is, are Raimon ready to fight Zeus? No, they are not. Zeus's team, who you can probably guess are based on the Greek gods, utterly destroy Raimon with ease as we finally get to see Aphrodite's special moves. And the first of which is just so damn badass. Do you understand how cold you need to be to literally snap your fingers and walk through the opposition, and after you're done, an actual hurricane blows everyone away? I remember first watching this match with my head in my hands thinking, nah, there's no way Raimon can win this. This is going to be a worse ass kicking than Vegeta versus Frieza.
Oh my god, you actually are crying.
And I'd like to say I was wrong, but just watch this. Have you ever seen a colder special move than that? This bro just grew wings, flipped his hair, flew into the sky, and created a literal nuke before kicking it at this poor boy. And obviously God Hand can't stop it. This bullshit gymnastics routine managed to break through it. Obviously it stood no chance against an actual spirit bomb. But maybe it's not all bad. I mean, in football, it doesn't really matter if you concede as long as you score more goals than the opposition. Oh. Oh, yeah, we might be screwed, lads. Zeus score again and again, making it 3-0 and injuring 4 Raimon players, which means the only person left on the bench is, oh god. Now I'm not gonna be too hard on this guy. Sure, he might have run away during Raimon's first ever match, but he did help them beat Otaku Junior High, and who am I kidding? This is gonna be a massacre.
僕が行きます。メガネ、僕だってライモンの一員だ。
メガネ。
Look, I promise I have not edited a single thing about what you're about to see next. This is genuinely exactly as it happens in the show.
梅岡に代わってメガネ。ライモン交代枠を全て使い切りました。So
now Raimon are down to 10 men and have to somehow score 4 goals. And it actually could have been more, but Zeus stopped caring about scoring and literally just stopped bullying Raimon. And for the first time, Endo is the one that considers giving up, and it's actually his team that are there to support him. So with no other choice, Endo uses Majin the Hand. And obviously it doesn't work. Do you know nothing about creating tension? But apparently neither does the show, because Zeus take a water break midway through the half, which is super sus. Naturally, Natsumi decides to investigate what's going on, and the girls find out that, I kid you not, Zeus are doping. These kids are like 13 years old and this man has them taking performance enhancing drugs. Someone please lock him up. But before you do that, wait just a little bit longer, because the second half soon gets underway and Endo changes into his granddad's old gloves, which is actually pretty important because as he's getting bullied by Aphrodite, he notices this mark on the left glove, and that changes everything. Was that not worth the wait or what? Inazuma 11 is the master of payoff. This kid just summoned a devil to stop a nuke, and none of us questioned it because it's just so damn hype. But I'm well aware some of you want to know what the hell just happened, so I'll do my best to explain. Whenever Endo uses any kind of special move, he always uses his right hand, and he's been doing the same for Majin the Hand. The only problem is, this entire time, Majin the Hand is technically a left-handed move since it gathers power from the heart, which is on the left side of his body. His granddad found a way around this issue by first channeling the power from his heart into his left hand before transferring it to the right. And by spinning, he's able to maximize 100% of this power. Okay, for the record, I know this doesn't make any sense, but considering how sick this moment was, we can let it slide. And of course, stopping God knows is one thing, but they are still 3-0 down and there's still the issue of not being able to score. So let's see what the team do about that. This move to me perfectly encapsulates what Inazuma 11 is about and why it's so amazing. The reason this match is so good is because it's more than just an exciting showdown. It isn't just a final battle. It's a powerful testament to the enduring themes of teamwork and friendship that Inazuma 11 constantly reiterates. It's great to have shows like Blue Lock that break away from this cliche by highlighting the individuality in sports. And while that's a refreshing take, football at its core is a game built on teamwork, on the trust and the bond between players. And Inazuma 11 understands this better than anyone. And nowhere is this more evident than in this very game. We see the effect Endo's success has on the rest of the team. They've been with him every step of the way and they know how hard he's worked. And he hasn't just done it for his love for the sport. He's done it for them. And in turn, his team respond by combining their strengths in ways we've never seen before. What's so beautiful about this is that they aren't pulling out entirely new techniques. Instead, they are combining old ones. We've seen Fire Tornado and Twin Boost before, but we've never seen them used in this way. They've come this far not by relying on something new or unknown, but by trusting in each other and in the foundations they've built. And at the heart of this is Endo.
何度でも何度でも立ち上がる。倒れるたびに強くなる。お前は遠藤の強さにはかなわない。
マジンザーハンド
Hido's words beautifully capture this sentiment. He says that they're going to take the ball that Endo saved and score the winner. And that echoes back to their very first game against Royal Academy, when Goenji felt that same drive to finish what Endo started. This shared desire to honor their captain by giving their all shows just how deep their bond has become over time. What makes this match so emotional is that it reflects the very essence of why we love team sports. How one person's courage can inspire an entire team, and how, in the end, it's not individual talent that wins the day, but the combined will of a group united by a common goal. And nowhere is this more evident than when Raimon scored a winning goal. We have Domon, who started off as a spy with the intention of betraying Raimon, and Ichinose, who clawed his way back from a terrible accident because of his love for football. And we have the boy who brought them all together. And finally, we have Goenji. The boy that scored Raimon's first ever goal is now scoring their last. And that's why Raimon vs Zeus is the greatest match in sports anime, because it reminds us of why we fell in love with this show in the first place. But even without this game, there's still so many more reasons to love Inazuma 11. So if you want to see why Inazuma 11 is the king of dialogue, click this video on the left. Thanks for watching.